Welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred right here at Black Video Network in San Antonio, Texas. And we are the voice for the Black community. I want to read a little statement to you because we're going to go to a different format. And so I'm going to read it. This show will be the last in this format of Discussions with the Writer Fred. It is on to an expanded program right here from our studio at Black Video Network. Beginning on January 14, I will team up with two very knowledgeable brothers and one extremely knowledgeable sister and bring to our viewers contemporary Black voices. That will be our new name and our new format. And I have two of those brothers with me today. Unfortunately, Sister Sharon Michael, Dr. Sharon Michael Shadwell, who is our fourth person, had a scheduling problem and couldn't make it today, but she will definitely be there when we launch our new program in 2 weeks. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Chris Dawkins and Mr. Caleb Alexander.
Thank you.
Tell our viewers something about you. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a guy from Columbus, Ohio. You see me representing here. Go Buckeyes. And being from Columbus, Ohio, I first learned to work with community. I worked within my community. My dad was from Jamaica. And whenever I wanted to know about what I could do for community, all I had to do was revisit Jamaica and find out what those people didn't have and know what we did have and how we could make ourselves better. So from that standpoint, I began a track in life of, first of all, being a servant, wanting to help other people and wanting to do better for not only myself and my family, but everyone around me. So that's kind of who I am.
Okay, Mr. Alexander.
Hi, my name's Caleb, and I have been in the publishing industry and an author for more than 20 years now. And so I look forward to bringing that perspective to the new show. Let's see. I started off as an author with Simon & Schuster. I went on to be a ghostwriter. I've written some of the biggest titles in the industry over the last 20 years, and that's about it.
Yeah, this brother's he kind of is modest. He's been a New York Times best-selling author in the past. So today, we're just going to give you somewhat of an example of what we'll be doing every Saturday from now on when we have our third partner here, Dr. Chadwell. So I'm going to throw out a question to you, brothers, and see what you think. Under a capitalist system, Black people will always be stuck with poverty. Because under a capitalist system, when you have a system where there's scarcity of resources and Chris Dawkins can become a billionaire, that means somebody has to go without. And who's always been the people to go without have been Black people. So have at it. Response.
Is that a different scenario than what's always been in the world? You're always going to have, unfortunately, a lesser group of people and somebody who has to do the grunt work. How do you make sure, if you don't have a capitalistic society, that you do have people that do that?
Do the grunt work?
Well,
I think you just define the difference in this country. Doesn't have to be grunt work. It just has to be work, and you get a decent salary for it. So I wouldn't call it grunt work. I just call it work.
I wouldn't call it grunt work if you get a decent salary. Because that, to me, is the meaning of capitalism. You may not be the richest person on earth, but you definitely are going to get a salary. But those people you're talking about those people who are underserved and underpaid.
Mostly underpaid.
Okay.
Underpaid. There has to be, in fact, there has to be people that cannot even make a decent wage in this country because of capitalism. If I own a McDonald's, I want to get real rich, so I'm going to get people to work for me as cheaply as possible. So is that fair to them? Or so the question is can capitalism be a fair system? And if it's not a fair system, who are the people who always get the brunt, as you say, do the grunt work? And I say it's Black people. Response.
Okay. So as far as capitalism, Are we talking about capitalism as a system? Are we talking about capitalism in this country, capitalism globally? And so when looking at it from that perspective and whether or not it's good for black people in this country, there's a yes and there's a no to it. I mean, under that system, under that economic system, you have some people who have done very well, and you have the majority of people who have not fared as well under that system. And so the question is, what are the alternatives, and what do we practice as a community? What do we practice as a nation? And what system would be better suited to us as a people?
Well, the alternatives, of course, we can look at some of our famous leaders. Dr. Du Bois said you had to get rid of capitalism. Dr. Martin Luther King came up with what was considered a guaranteed wage. Every family will make X amount of dollars. And so many of our leaders deviated away from capitalism because there is no way. See, when we got in the game was almost over. Okay? We didn't really get in the game until 1964, 1965. So the biggest con game on us is inheritance. So,
But has there been a new lease on life with the gig economy, with the things that have happened with the internet? You know, now one of the sayings are, you know, if you're born poor, that's not your fault. But if you die poor, that is your fault. And the reason being is that
that's a good capitalist saying. Oh boy, you talk about brainwash. There it is, right there.
You know, yesterday I just came back from Orlando, and a black lady, I decided to do Turo, which is like Airbnb for cars. And I had a black lady, and the first time I rented from Turo, couldn't find my car in the parking lot. And I'm walking up and down the aisle where they said the car was parked in the garage, couldn't find it. Finally, I call and I say, where is the car? I can't find it. Did you park it in the front of the row or the back of the row? And they said, we've got 113 cars. We don't know exactly where we parked it. My point in saying that is that you've got people who are being entrepreneurs who are making money. No, they're not going to be necessarily a billionaire, but with 13 cars, maybe about 20 years ago, they could not be an Avis. But right now, with the gig economy, they possibly can.
Well, you say they own 13 cars?
They own 13 cars.
That's my point. That's my point.
But
You can't drive 13 cars.
No, but they're renting them out.
They're renting them out. So
Okay.
the Turo is like it supplants Avis or Hertz or whatever. So it's like an individual who goes and buys these different cars and they rent them out themselves. So they're forming their own small business.
Correct.
As a car rental company.
Correct.
My thing about that is, due to the legacy of this country, where does that initial financing come from?
There you go.
You understand what I'm saying? And so in this country, again, you give someone a 200-year, 300-year, 400-year head start. Everyone knows that wealth is compounded. And so when you have a segment of the population who not only inherited this money and this property, and then they go on to inherit the grandparents' property, and then they leave this property, and I mean it's compounded over centuries. And so the starting point is not the same. It's not equal. And so when you have one segment of the population that's so overwhelmingly dominant that controls every aspect of the society, that's where you have to call into call to question as to whether capitalism is fair play and whether it does work for everybody. And so when you talk about the gig economy or the new economy, where does that initial financing come from?
Absolutely.
And so that's where the disparity comes from.
And I don't disagree with that, because I think, as Fred would agree with, you have a capitalistic society that was based off of basically poor folks' back, okay? Slavery, and you're not really getting the benefit for it. And those people who have the legacy of being white are benefiting from it, and some of them don't even realize it.
Okay, we're going to end up part one. We'll be back with part two. If you like this kind of discussion, join us as we continue this conversation about capitalism, good or bad.